Welcome, everyone. I'm Justin Paperny. Today's Monday, which means it's a work day, which means we're going to talk about prison today on our White Collar Advice YouTube channel. And it's really a privilege for me to welcome my friend Belen Enriquez to our channel to learn more about her experience. So, Belen, welcome. I know you've served time in prison, so I just want to jump in and help our viewers understand what that first day in federal prison was like. But also, before you do, how long was your sentence? And again, welcome to the channel.
Thank you, Justin, for having me.
Sure.
My sentence was technically 15 months. Well, it was 15 months. And with the good time, the 54 days that the federal system offers, so it ended up being 12 months, so 1 full year.
And as I understand it, you served the whole experience not in a camp, but you were designated. I know you wanted to go to a camp, but you were designated to the Federal Detention Center in Miami. So what was that first day like in the detention center, and were you prepared for time in custody?
Well, technically, I had spent 2 weeks in awaiting my bond, awaiting for my Navy conditions to clear. So, in a way, I guess I was lucky that I had already seen what the federal detention was like. So I was a little more prepared. Nonetheless, it's very shocking because it's not your home. You're not surrounded by anybody that you know, and it's pretty scary. If I would think of the experience and how it happened, it was really scary for me.
I put up a video last week called "Do You Have a Secret Fear of Going to Prison?" And on LinkedIn, you had commented that prior to your surrender, you had spent some nights crying, which I can relate to. And then you're in custody. Was the experience more built up in your mind and then you were in prison? And it's like, well, it's not exactly like TV. Help us understand what your imagination was telling you versus what actually happened in prison.
Well, I think everybody's afraid of going to prison because it's unknown, right? You don't know what to expect, and I think movies don't really portray the reality of what is to be in prison. I think there's a lot of shows and everything that try to, but I guess my biggest fear and the reason why I cried is because I didn't know what to expect fully. But, as days went by, I started to feel a little better. And also, I was in the same institution as my co-defendant. So that was also scary because, I didn't know what to expect from her because obviously, it's a person that you had your criminal case with, and then all of a sudden you are in the same cell as her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Sure. Can you walk us through a day on the inside as specifically as you can? What time you woke up? Did you go to the chow hall? What was your job? Did you exercise? I'd love to listen about a day in your life in prison.
Okay, so because I was at a detention center, more an administrative facility, it's a little different from other institutions. So we had our hours were different during the week versus the weekend. So during the week, usually at 6:30 or so, they open the doors because I was in a dormitory style facility, not an open bay camp. So the correctional officer would come and open the doors. So at 6:30, so you kind of get ready to go to breakfast. And then you have to make your bed, you have to clean your room. So breakfast is served at 7 a.m. in the chow hall, which is because this is closed. It's a closed wing of, it's a closed unit. So you don't really get to go anywhere versus camps where you actually walk there.
Yes.
So you would just come from the second floor. I was on the upper tier. So you would come down and, have your breakfast and, whatnot. And then whoever had a job, you would go to your job. And I had 3 jobs actually. But, my jobs were like later in the afternoon.
What did you, what were your jobs specifically?
Well, I was an education tutor, and I was also visiting orderly, so we had to clean the visiting room. And I also was in the kitchen, so I was a kitchen orderly.
What
So,
was the count schedule like there? In other words, how many times a day were you counted, and how many of those counts did you have to stand?
well, one was census count was at 1 p.m. So that's kind of like they count everybody, making sure that everybody is where they are supposed to be at their job. Then you have the 4 p.m. and then you have the 10 p.m. count. So the ones that you have to stand up are only the 4 p.m. and the 10 p.m. count. Everything else is just, is informal, let's say. But still, it's a count. So,
What I'd like to ask next is, you seem to be very productive on the inside. You're now home from prison on probation, thriving, working for a very successful law firm in Miami, and I see on LinkedIn and other places how you're really growing your network and you're proactive and you don't run from your conduct. So there are so many admirable things about you, which I presume happened in part because of your character, but also how productive you were in prison. So some people in prison sink into despair. They may watch TV all day. It's a very hopeless environment. You seem to be very proactive and productive. Am I correct in that you were productive and nurturing your network and not spending your days complaining? Walk us through your mindset while in custody.
well, look, I mean, I knew that I was going to spend at least a year there, right? At that time, I didn't really know the extent of the good time and all that. So, my mindset was always try to learn something and try to be involved in anything related to the prison system and try to help others. My motivation was always knowing that I was going to come out and go to law school. So I spent a lot of time in the law library. I spent a lot of time helping others with their pleadings and, like just trying to give them guidance. I was a jailhouse lawyer, what they call. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, which is, that's how they defined us. And, just I had a goal of trying to read at least a book a day.
A book a
I mean,
day.
sometimes,
That's impressive.
yeah,
That's impressive. It's a big number.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I tried. It
Sure.
not always happened because, like I had 3 jobs that occupied my time a lot. But yeah, I mean, I always try to like keep busy. I think that's the number one advice that I would give everybody. Try to keep busy, because if you don't, your mind is just going to be very affected by the experience.
Did you have any real problems while in custody with other women? Did you see fights, some contraband? I know the prison hustle exists. Did you do a pretty good job of separating yourself from any trouble and creating the right friendships? I'd love for you to offer advice to people who are going in, because it's hard to do anything great in prison if you're associating with the wrong people, making bad decisions, engaging in the disciplinary in the prison hustle and getting caught. So help us understand. Did you see violence, and did you see
Yes,
some bad things going on in there?
yes, I did. And I was actually, there was a couple of inmates that wanted to initiate, physical altercations with me in particular. I mean, I try to stay away from all that, because obviously, like, you will get a shot, as they call it, and,
Yes.
most likely you would lose your good time, which was never my intention, because I wanted to go home. But, but it's really easy to get in trouble in prison. Like, sometimes, like, it's the kind of like on the outside where like you get caught up in this conspiracy things, like,
Yeah.
it's the same. Like, you can just be standing somewhere and there's a fight, and then all of a sudden you get mixed in that, and then you get written up. So, yeah, I mean, and yeah, I did get an incident report, and I learned so much through that about inmate discipline and, appeals and all that. So, yeah, I mean, I did get one. It was a 300 series, but.
What was the 300 series? So for those watching, there's 4 series of disciplinary infractions. They're called shots in prison: 100, 200, 300, 400. 400, like a 408, for example, is if you're caught running a business from prison. Not as serious. 100 is the murder, tattooing, things you're not really going to see unless
Yeah, no.
you're not going to see that. 300, not quite 4. What was the disciplinary infraction, may I ask?
Yeah, sure. It was related to count. I was out of bounds. I happened to be in my friend's room, and I was like, okay, maybe nothing would happen. Maybe the correctional officer wouldn't realize, but they did realize, and so they wrote me up. Yes, you lose like your privileges. I think I had my commissary taken from me for like 30 days and my phones, but look, I mean, some people lose their good time, and
Yep.
or some people it might be more serious. So, my advice: try to stay out of the way.
So part of why we're filming this video, everyone watching, is sometimes mistakes happen. I mentioned that I had been in prison for 9 years and I made a mistake that, had I been caught, would have been a disciplinary infraction. I didn't prepare. I didn't know any better. So sometimes mistakes happen. If you do, you have to own and acknowledge them. Speaking earlier, I want to touch on my business partner, Michael Santos. So he served 8 years in the penitentiary. And in Atlanta, when he was in the USP, he tried to create a routine. I think he did like suicide watch during the night from 12 p.m. to 6 a.m. He tried to separate himself from as many people as possible because you have fewer problems. I tried to do the same thing, waking at 4 a.m. It sounds like by your 3 jobs and reading so much that you were in that same vein, that you were trying to create a routine where you were productive, but as avoiding as many problems as you possibly could. At least that's what it sounds like I'm hearing.
Oh, and no, now that you mention it, towards the end of my time, I was a suicide watch companion too. And the reason why I don't consider that a job, even though it's extremely helpful, because some institutions will write you a recommendation for extra halfway house, is because in our institution, it was considered a program more than a job.
Got it.
So we didn't get any, it was just a small, incentive, but it wasn't really like a job, let's say. But I did do that.
As we wrap up this video, I'd love to ask, it seems as if you learned some valuable lessons, starting with you accepted responsibility, you had a productive experience, but I'd love for you to tell everyone watching, what are some valuable lessons you learned from this experience that will make the rest of your life incredibly fulfilling and productive?
Well, I think the thing that the main thing that I learned in prison is that you cannot just assume that your life is over. It's not. You can't think like that, because if you do, you're gonna have a hard time adapting when you come back to society. You also should never think that, granted, people look at you different, but that shouldn't stop you from achieving your goals. And also, accept responsibility is very important, because that was part of the problem. Like why I suffered so much going into prison, and why I cried, because I never thought that I deserved that. But once you have time to think about it, then it helps you acknowledge that you have to take responsibility.
So last question, and I wasn't planning to discuss this with you, but you touched on it. Do you find that people respond differently to you when they learn of your prison record? Do you find yourself defending it or excusing it? I suppose you never really get comfortable. I guess in my space, I've done this full time for 12 years, so it comes, talking about prison comes as easily as breathing, I suppose. But do you find that people are really like, oh my goodness, you went to federal prison, when they learn, and how do you respond to that?
Well, look, if anything, I always disclose that I've been to federal prison, because, as part of what I do, number one, it relates to my current job, so it's important. And number two, it's because, some people are very curious, and as we know, criminal convictions, especially federal criminal convictions, are public records.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, regardless, I want the world to know that I'm not ashamed. I'm really not. I embrace it because it's part of who I am. And, it's my life and I made a mistake, but it doesn't mean, and it wouldn't change who I am. So, yeah, I have no problem.
You just said that beautifully. I echo all of those same thoughts. For all of you watching, don't serve one day longer than the sentence. It's frustrating when our team gets messages from people who have been home for 3 months, 5 years, 15 years, and they're still working to overcome a short time in a minimum security camp or a holding center. Be proactive on the inside. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Grow your network. Demonstrate why you're worthy of their love and support. And if you can do that, you look at how Belen is thriving on the other side, working for a very successful law firm in Florida, growing her network. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on. It's a privilege to know you, to allow our team to interview you. We look forward to doing more work with you. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights today. I know it's not easy.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And, like I said, just do your best. It's not the end. And we all survive. So just put in the work and have the right attitude. And it's possible to, bounce back from prison.
Thank you.